Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson from Infinity Whole Health, and please check out our podcasts at Revealing Wholeness. And we have well over 100 podcasts now on that site. And you'll catch it on most of your favorite podcast sites that you access different podcasts. Just search us out there and you'll find us. Now, it is the end of January. It's the 27th of January, and this is our second installment or part two of my four favorite diets. And we talked about in part one the Mediterranean diet and the Trim Healthy Mama food eating plan. So again, we talk about diet and we talk about not wanting to diet, but rather upgrade our eating style to incorporate things that would be more conducive to increased health, better weight management, better blood sugar management, better stress management, more abundant energy, better sleep. All of that comes from how we kind of treat food and how we eat it. And so we went from something that wasn't necessarily that restricted, but it started getting us to change things in a Mediterranean diet. We upgraded a little bit to some more complex topics of how to separate carbs and fats in the Trim Healthy Mama plan. And now we're going to go to really one of my more favorite diet or food eating plans, and that is a low grain or phase two diet plan. And Melvin Page was a doctor, or rather dentist, he was born in the late 1800s and became a dentist around, I believe it was late 1920s. And he started working with clients after clients, and he realized that if people eat a certain way, they had way less cavities in their mouth. And then when he started doing blood work, he actually went to court at one point in time, and they literally tried to tell him that he was practicing outside of his license as a dentist, and he ended up pulling like some 40,000 blood work cases and proved that a calcium ratio of 2.5 to phosphorus 1, that we maintained dental our teeth, our integrity of the dental part of our mouth, as well as the bones. We didn't have bones leaching out calcium and now going to like an osteopenia or osteoporosis issue. And so it's really interesting that we have a dentist that realized this, and now he's being subjected to it in a court of law in the 40s, trying to prove that he's just trying to help patients. And so he's the one that really developed a low grain diet. And so we can say that, well, low grain's only been around for like a decade. No, phase two diet, basically the premise was you cut out all bread, pasta, starch, even potatoes if you can, cereals, grains of any kind, rice, all of it. Just cut it out because they're empty calories and they just destabilize calcium, because as we spike blood sugar and crash blood sugar with carbs, calcium has to come to the rescue as one of the things that's going to try to help stabilize blood sugar. Of course, insulin is the big deal, but calcium and magnesium will still try to help maintain it, much to the detriment of our body. So if we're always pouring calcium into our blood because of high blood sugar, we're going to leach it out of our bones and our teeth, and we're going to have more dental caries. So it's not that sugar causes dental caries. It isn't that way. What it does is deplete calcium stores that weakens the teeth, and now they start becoming prone to infection, because all of us have bacteria in our mouth. We can do all these crazy outlandish things to kill bacteria. And in essence, and I haven't said this many times in my podcast, but it's a concept that is kind of appropriate here. We tend to think like a medical doctor. I want to attack the outer because of my ever weakening condition, rather than strengthen my internal environment to resist the ever changing environment out there. So it's a different form of thinking. I'm tired of thinking from outside in, where, coronavirus is going to get us, or, if I don't brush my teeth, this is going to happen, or if, all these weird things that we do that we think we have to do, when all of it is an internal dysregulation, for lack of a better thing, whether it's mentally, whether it's chemically, whether it's physically, whether it's minerally in our body. It's all those things that as we think more deeply, we want to always think cause orientation. And so if I supply now nutrients in my body and I'm maintaining the systems in their right places, now all of a sudden my body performs admirably and beautifully, just like it was always designed. I don't have to be fearful of anything outside of me because I'm healthy. That's the ultimate goal. And so with a phase 2 diet, when we start really cranking up the amount of vegetables that we eat and good sources of protein and excellent sources of fat, just like we talked about in the Mediterranean diet, and I leave very little room for carbs, now I've got a body that is getting lots of vegetables, which is where our minerals come from and our vitamins come from. I'm getting usable protein, which hopefully is grass-fed, and now I've got good fat sources, which also contain a lot of nutrients, like the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin D, these other vitamins, vitamin A, that we all need going in our body to run anti-infection or infection fighting, that we need to run every body process, whether it's I need to produce more hormones so I feel better and repair and look younger, so that I sleep better. I mean, it's all about these high quality nutrients that aren't found in white flour, white bread, refined, processed, highly processed foods in our store. Let me mention a couple highly processed foods. Any cereal, almost any cereal, is extruded grain, which means it's heated and it's squished out and it creates a little flake or a waffle-like thing or whatever. It's destroyed. It is so overheated that they have to add essential nutrients and fortify it. It's ridiculous. In some of my podcasts, I've talked about blackheads that I see on some clients and some people out in the public. Those blackheads are there because that is iron filings trying to come out your body, because that's one of the fortified things they do with cereal. Hey, let's iron fortify this because you need iron. They didn't tell you that they take iron filings, small, and put it in the cereal. That's the iron they're using. But it's a marketing play. Oh, this cereal has iron. Fantastic. That's good for my body. Not off of your bumper. So, with that being said, the low grain diet that Melvin Page really started spared calcium, and he watched his clients have less dental issues. He watched his clients grow old gracefully and not, all hunched over. Now I'm using a cane and I've got a hip replacement, a knee replacement because I don't have the calcium available to keep my body healthy. That's just one mineral we're talking about. So I tell you the phase 2 because it's a lot more restrictive than the 2 that we had on our last video, the Mediterranean and the Trim Healthy Mama. We're really pulling back from all grains. Yes, we can do potatoes in small amounts, and I do. I enjoy potatoes, and I talked about that last time. And now you kind of understand why I'm careful with potatoes. I don't do russets, by the way. There's over 800 different types of potatoes, and we eat one of the kind of the worst one for us. Go for the new potatoes, the goldens, the reds, all those, the purple potatoes. Those are all much better quality, much higher density nutrition-wise than the others. So you might as well do another upgrade. Let's move away from russets. Let's bring in something different. With the phase 2 diet, we still allow for carbs though, and up to 60 grams of carbs a day, 20 per meal. And you get to choose how you spend them. If you want to spend it on wine, which is just sugar, and it's not complex carbohydrate that's very dense starch like a potato or bread, it's actually not as bad. And it's not fructose. Most fruits are fructose, which is a little bit harder on the human body. Grapes are glucose or dextrose, they interconvert. And so it's a better thing to do. Let's say that I like beer. Well, that's a grain alcohol. It's like liquid bread. Yeah, but I don't like wine. Okay, then you're going to want to control how much beer you drink. Well, how much can I drink? You're going to have to figure that out. How many carbs are in it? 20 grams per meal. Where are your other carbs in your meal? Maybe you only get 4 ounces of beer. Sorry, enjoy it though. And this is if you want weight loss. Once you've maintained your weight, you can be a little bit more forthcoming with those grains and the carbs that you eat. But watch, you'll be surprised. Wow, I can really gain weight quite quickly adding carbs. I reduce them back down and I begin to go down in weight again and go back to my fighting weight, so to speak. I'm not here to help you reach a magical weight. I'm here to help you look like you want to look and feel like you want to feel and be able to do all the things you want to do for as long as you want to do them. That's the goal of any style of eating. Yes, we can spend time being bad or not eating as strict as we normally do. And yes, we're going to see some pounds come on or some ounces come on. But as we go through the process, we should resort back to that style instead of diet, but that style of eating that is just one with us. So that's a low grain diet or a phase 2 diet. Some of you out there may have already thought, phase 2, what's phase 1? Is there a phase 1? There is. It's way more restrictive than a phase 2, and it's for those that can't seem to lose weight simply doing a phase 2. I would guess probably 85% of my clients will lose weight quite well, really abiding by a phase 2 diet. And so if you're looking for that sheet, I love it because it's a one sheet, just everything right on one page, not front and back, just the front side of one page. And I give it to my clients, say, hey, put this in your cupboard. It shows you what you should be eating. If it's on the list, go for it. And so that's kind of a thing that I can, if you want, message me. I'll email that sheet off to you. Happy to do it. Anybody who changes their lifestyle in that way as an upgrade is going to be so much more productive in their life, so much more happy, so much more less hangry, and enjoy life. That's what it's really about, is helping each other enjoy the most out of life. So let's move away from the phase 2 low grain diet, and now let's move into something even more restrictive, and that's the ketogenic diet or the keto diet. So a little side note here, I've already created the paleo podcast, so catch that podcast. It's out there, and that podcast kind of goes through a paleo and how it's a little bit different than a keto. And I'm gonna pull some things from that podcast a little bit, but it goes into much more depth about what a paleo diet means and why a paleo diet. And it's not that it's bad. It has a lot of merit, and keto does too. For those of you, and this probably goes without saying, let's say that you're sitting there and you're listening to this and you didn't even listen to my first or watch my first video on those other 2 diets, the Mediterranean and the Trim Healthy Mama, but that you're sitting there and you're like, you know what? I wish I could not be afraid of food. It'd be really nice to not think about my gut hurting. Maybe you have IBS, maybe you have Crohn's disease, maybe you have something else going on in the gut or something you don't even know. And every time you eat, you just feel bad. You get bloating, you get gas, you have farting, whatever. Maybe you're burping a lot, maybe you have acid reflux too. When we begin that process of cutting out grains, there's a lot of irritation with grains alone. So grains have phytic acids, and they're typically not fermented. So when I have folks that come from that angle of, oh, I've had Crohn's disease, or I've got diverticulitis, or I've got irritable bowel syndrome, I've got something pretty wrong with my gut. I say, well, let's pull back from legumes and grains, because they're going to have phytic acids, they're going to have lectins. And when we do that, we immediately start feeling better. Our digestive system starts to heal. We actually digest our food better, and that actually adds energy to us all the way around. And then you get to kind of experiment with adding foods back in and see if they irritate your gut. Hey, I was doing really good for 3 or 4 months on my eating style, and I experimented in pulling some things back, and I realized, man, I cannot do this, or I cannot do quinoa, or I cannot do wheat, or I can't do corn. Those are things that you'll find frequently, and they may be mild irritants, but you've been doing it so long, your body kind of sucks it up and it just keeps moving right along. The ketogenic diet is really quite helpful for a lot of people because it just absolutely removes grains, just like the low grain or no grain or phase 2 diet. When we remove those things, we tend to start, or at least bring irritants off of your diet. And now we can start healing in a multiple of different ways. We remove inflammation. And as we remove inflammation, now your body can clean out cells. As we clean out cells, now the cells can heal. Now they can start amping up their systems and repairing their little tiny organs within the cells themselves. And now all of a sudden we have a great energy abundance in our body. Our heart is healing, our blood vascular system is healing, our liver is healing. It's no longer inflamed. I can actually think more clearly. I can actually do my job better. My relationships are better because I feel like I'm just more calm. I'm more me. And those are things that as we remove things that are irritants to us become so vitally important. So if let's say you're in this process, you're like, man, I'm thinking about jumping on this keto bandwagon. I've done a lot of things in the past, but I'm really looking to go on the next level. Great, this is the next upgrade. And so keto is a bit more restrictive. And I like the keto diet because it says, hey, 20 to 50 grams of carbs is max per day. And we don't even really want you to go for that 20 grams per meal like a phase 2 will allow. We want you to try to stay away from it as much as humanly possible. But the problem with the ketogenic diet, and I've mentioned this on podcasts, is that people tend to focus on protein. That's not the design of the keto. The keto is about 20% protein, even less. And I don't want to muddy the waters too much, so I want you to take this next statement that I'm going to make with a grain of salt, so to speak. I think it was mid-2000s, we had the China study book come out. And they talked about, giving protein to the poor communities in China tended to increase their risk of cancer and the amount of cancer that was happening in those poor areas as we increased protein in those poor areas. And then they went further and said, okay, we're going to take a laboratory rat and we're going to feed it 20% protein diet. And when we do that, it forms cancer in the rat. Now, when we drop that same rat that has cancer now to 5% protein diet, the cancer went away. When we took that same animal that fixed the cancer in its body by 5% protein diet and bump it back up to 20%, the cancer came back. And then we dropped it back down to 5% protein and the cancer went away. Same animal. They kept doing that over and over in the life of that animal. Now, he made a very, very potent statement at the end of the book. He says, we are not advocating vegetarianism. And if you're out there as a vegan listening to this and saying, yeah, that's not it. And I want to explain why. He said that, Campbell said that in the book because he knew that they had found something, they just didn't know what. And when I tell you what protein they were feeding him, it doesn't come as a big shock. They said, hey, we cut all these extra peanuts and they're high in protein and they're a legume and they have lectins. Of course, they didn't think that. They just knew they had peanuts. They said, what better way to get protein to these individuals except supplying them with peanuts? And so they fed them a protein that was high in lectins that very much caused problems with digestion and can be very much an allergen to many people. Peanut is one of the highest allergen foods. And I don't know in this rat what they fed besides the 20% protein. And I don't know what kind of protein they fed it. They never said. And so what if they fed the rat peanut protein as well, just trying to stay congruent with their study? Well, now we have, again, an irritant on an animal that this is not its natural protein state. I mean, rats will eat anything, let's just be honest, but that's not necessarily their natural stuff. And if you think about it, what does a rat eat? But fermented food, often. They're garbage eaters. So fermentation is an important part of our life. And we look at a rat and say, well, it obviously is an important part of theirs. And so when I talk about that 20% protein, that's why I want some of you to clue in when we talk about a ketogenic diet. We're talking about 20% protein and 60 to 70% fat. And then the rest of nutrients coming from the vegetables, which will have some forms of carbs in them, will have some forms of protein in them, will have some forms of fat in those vegetables. But, we also want to think on terms of, if I'm doing a ketogenic diet, what am I really burning? And this kind of goes back to the Trim Healthy Mama that I mentioned in the part one of this diet series. It goes on fuel sources. And so we want to be careful. We want a body to start burning fat because that's its design, and storing and burning fat. That becomes really good, and the ketogenic diet does it very well. And that's why when even they've taken ketogenic diets and said, hey, we're going to pit it against a low-fat diet. Yes, a low-fat diet helped people lose weight, but they also lost muscle, they lost tone, they lost a lot of other things. But the ketogenic diet, they actually built muscle. They burned way more fat. They were more lean than the low-fat diet, and they felt better, and their cardiovascular risk was lower. Everything was better. So when I tell you, if you're kind of concerned about that 60 to 70% fat number in the ketogenic diet, don't be. because fats are where it's at. Fats are where nutrients come from. Now, not trans fat, hydrogenated fats, margarines, garbage fats. Those don't work. And if you're a ketogenic eater, I want you to consider eating more grass-fed beef because that's a better fat source in it. And I also want you to consider eating more organ meats, because when we look back at our past, we just didn't eat the muscle meat on a cow 500 years ago. We ate the entire animal. We had kidney pie. We made, sweetbread. We made, which was the thymus gland that sits in the heart. We ate the heart itself. We eat the liver. We eat the organs. We would make, hot dogs out of a lot of the intestines and things we didn't want to eat. Wouldn't it be awesome if all hot dogs were made that way? We could just go eat hot dogs that taste good, but there would be all the organs that we need, all that nutrient density. Hot dogs would be some of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. They're not, but wouldn't it be nice? So ketogenic diet, couple pitfalls there is that you will eat too much protein and you will eat the wrong type of fats and protein. And so I want to correct that thinking with a ketogenic diet. Now, just a quick note on the ketogenic diet, it gets its name from ketosis, or trying to stay into just burning ketones. In our body, our favorite fuel source is sugar, and we'll take fat and the liver will convert it to glycogen and now put glucose or glycogen out and burn it as sugar. So we take fat, convert it to sugar, and we burn it. Why? Because our brain can only use sugar as fuel. So that's why we have that wonderful mechanism. We store fat very well. We store very little sugar on the body. That's for an emergency. Hey, lion's chasing me and I got to run. I got to outrun it. I just need to run long enough to outrun it. So we have some sugar stores for emergency responses like that. But most of the time we are fat storers and fat burners. That's what we do. So as we burn fat, we're converting it to sugar, and now the brain's burning it. If I have no sugar, it converts it to I'll say a sugar-like substance, for lack of a better way to put it, but to a ketone. And so ketones or sugars can both be burned by the brain. So in our cells, we take sugar, and it's typically a six carbon ring, for lack of, complexity. When we break that carbon ring apart and we get two lactic acid molecules that are 3 carbons apiece. Ketones, some of the simplest ketones, are 3 carbons. They look similar, but they're ketones. We can burn them, and as we pull a carbon off, we release a carbon and combine it with an oxygen or a couple, and we burn out carbon dioxide, or 2 oxygens. So carbon and 2 oxygens come out of our mouth. We breathe in oxygen to now have that chemical response in our cell to break apart that sugar, connect that carbon with oxygen, in the process releasing tremendous amounts of heat, generating energy in our body. And then we breathe out that carbon dioxide. So it's the cyclic nature in each cell, and our brain can only burn ketones or sugar. That is why we have those mechanisms. It doesn't burn fat and it doesn't burn proteins like some other cells will. So a ketogenic diet is excellent for doing that, for maintaining blood sugar, for generating energy, for generating weight loss. It's wonderful. And it goes without saying, well, duh, of course it would do that. So we've gone through simplistic dietary changes or upgrades in our life with the Mediterranean diet. We've gone a little bit more advanced in something like the Trim Healthy Mama, where we've separated fats and carbs in meals. Now we've gone to the phase 2 diet, where we've really, really cut down most carbs. We said, hey, no to those carbs that can be detrimental. Yes, we can do a little bit of sugar here and there, but we're going to limit the amount of sugar. And then we went to even more restrictive and said, hey, ketogenic diet, not only are we going to restrict carbs even further, but we recommend that, you eat more frequently, you don't do stimulants, you avoid alcohol, you avoid potatoes, you avoid sweet potatoes, you avoid carrots, you avoid vegetables that tend to have sugar. And so it's much, much more restrictive. So it depends on what your goal is. If you want to lose weight faster, you go with a more restrictive ketogenic diet, but don't skimp on the good sources of protein and fat, like grass-fed animals. If you have a choice between organic grained animals or grass-fed non-organic, you go with a grass-fed non-organic every time. You'd rather have the better fats, the higher omega-3 fats that are in the fat. They'll taste a little gamey, but it's just going to be way better for you. It's going to be way more nutrient dense, and you should try to get liver and other organ meats in your diet. So we've gone through all that. check out my next podcast coming up within the next couple of days, and it's going to be on how do we wrap this all up? How can we make this realistic for each of us? And so I'm going to give you some clues and things that we can do with that, and some fine tuning. We're going to talk a little bit about blood types and how we can do things there too, because some blood types may not lend so well to high protein. And so we'll mention those and what to do for that. So if you start doing some higher protein meals and you start not feeling so good, you may be that blood type. So do catch that podcast, and that will kind of fine tune things for you as well. If you have questions, concerns, things that I mentioned, you want some clarification, please message me. But again, or call me or text me. But again, until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson, and thank you for joining us for this series on upgrading our diet and our lifestyle choices. I'll talk to you later, or I'll talk to you then.